After a year on the run, Rosa knocks on a stranger's door just before a storm. Ethan lets her in without question, but neither is ready for what follows. When a figure from her past resurfaces, danger threatens the fragile peace they've found. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The autumn wind pushed against Rosa Mendes as she walked along the empty country road. At 26, she looked older, her face tired from too many sleepless nights and too many goodbyes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her backpack held everything she owned in the world. Night was coming fast. The sun was already setting behind the hills, painting the sky orange and purple. Rosa had been walking since morning, after the diner where she'd worked for 2 weeks had closed suddenly. The owner had paid her half of what he owed her, and she hadn't bothered fighting for the rest. It wasn't worth it. Nothing seemed worth fighting for anymore. Just keep moving, she whispered to herself, the words lost in the wind. She'd been drifting for nearly a year now, ever since everything fell apart back home. One town blended into another. One temporary job led to the next. She slept where she could, shelters when she was lucky, bus stations when she wasn't. She wasn't homeless, she told herself, just untethered. As darkness closed in around her, Rosa felt the first drops of rain. Perfect, just perfect. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and kept walking. There had to be somewhere she could find shelter for the night. Then she saw it, a light in the distance, warm and steady through the trees. As she got closer, she made out the shape of a large farmhouse, weathered but solid. Smoke rose from the chimney. A porch light glowed. Rosa hesitated at the bottom of the driveway. She didn't like asking for help. But the rain was falling harder now and the temperature was dropping. She'd learned months ago that pride wasn't worth freezing for. She walked up to the house and stood for a moment on the porch. Then, taking a deep breath, she knocked. Ethan Calder was sitting at his kitchen table when he heard the knock. He frowned, looking up from his paperwork. He wasn't expecting anyone. He never was. At 31, Ethan had gotten used to being alone. His farmhouse, passed down through generations of his family, stood isolated at the edge of town. Three Pines Farm, named for the trio of tall pines that stood guard at the entrance to his property, had been his only companion for the past 5 years. That's how he preferred it. The knock came again, louder this time. With a sigh, Ethan pushed back from the table and walked to the door. Probably someone whose car had broken down, needing to use his phone. It happened sometimes, though rarely this late. He opened the door and found a young woman standing on his porch, rain dripping from her hair and jacket. She was small, barely reaching his shoulder, but there was something in the way she stood, straight-backed and tense, that made him think she was stronger than she looked. "I'm not here to steal," she said immediately, her voice shaking slightly, though whether from cold or fear he couldn't tell. "I just need a place to sleep tonight. I'll be gone before sunrise." Ethan studied her face. There was weariness there, and wariness too, but no dishonesty that he could see. "Then sleep here," he said simply, "and stay as long as you need." The woman blinked, clearly surprised by his easy acceptance. "I'm Rosa," she said after a moment. "Ethan." He stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in before you catch pneumonia." Rosa hesitated only briefly before stepping into the warmth of the house. She hadn't expected it to be this easy. Usually there were questions, suspicions, but this tall, quiet man had simply let her in. The inside of the farmhouse was simple but comfortable. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the living room, a fire crackling softly. The furniture was old but well kept. A large sofa, a worn armchair, wooden tables, and shelves lined with books. "The bathroom's down the hall if you want to dry off," Ethan said, closing the door behind her. "I'll find you something to wear while your clothes dry." Rosa nodded, suddenly feeling awkward. "Thank you, I really will be gone in the morning." "No rush," Ethan replied, his voice low and steady. "There's a storm coming in. Might be here for a couple of days." He disappeared up the stairs, leaving Rosa standing in the middle of the living room, dripping onto the wooden floor. She looked around, taking in the details of the house. It was neat, but lived in. A man's house with little decoration besides a few framed photographs on the mantel. Curiosity got the better of her, and she moved closer to look at them. One showed a younger Ethan with his arm around another man, who looked similar enough to be his brother. In another, Ethan stood beside a pretty blonde woman, both of them smiling. She heard his footsteps on the stairs and quickly stepped away from the photos. "Here," he said, handing her a stack of clothes. "These might be too big, but they're clean and dry." "Thank you." Rosa took the clothes, a flannel shirt and sweatpants that would certainly be too large for her frame. "I don't usually do this, you know, show up at strangers' houses." "And I don't usually let strangers in," Ethan replied with a small shrug. "Guess we're both making exceptions tonight." While Rosa changed in the bathroom, Ethan went to the kitchen and put on a pot of coffee. He wasn't sure what had made him invite her to stay. It had been a long time since he'd welcomed anyone into his home, 5 years to be exact. 5 years since Claire had left, taking his plans and dreams with her. 5 years since he'd lost his brother, Matt, just 3 months later. Since then, Ethan had kept to himself, focusing on the farm and little else. But something in Rosa's tired eyes had struck a chord in him. He recognized that look, someone who had lost too much and was just trying to keep going. When she emerged from the bathroom, her wet clothes bundled in her arms, she looked almost comical in his oversized clothes. The shirt hung to her knees and she'd had to roll the sweatpants up several times. "I made coffee," he said, nodding toward the pot. "Or there's tea if you prefer." "Coffee would be great, thanks." She placed her wet clothes on the back of a chair. "Is there a laundry room where I can hang these?" "I'll take care of it," Ethan said, pouring 2 mugs of coffee. "How do you take yours?" "Black is fine." He handed her a mug and took her clothes, disappearing briefly to hang them in the laundry room off the kitchen. When he returned, she was still standing in the same spot, as if afraid to make herself comfortable. "You can sit," he said, gesturing to the kitchen table. "Have you eaten?" Rosa hesitated. "I'm fine." Her stomach chose that moment to growl loudly, betraying her words. Ethan's mouth curved in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "I'll make something." Rosa watched as Ethan moved around the kitchen with easy familiarity. He wasn't much of a talker, which suited her fine. She'd had enough of people who talked too much and meant too little. He made a simple meal of scrambled eggs, toast and bacon, setting a plate in front of her before taking his own seat across the table. "Thank you," she said again, feeling like she'd said it 100 times already. But what else could she say to this stranger who'd taken her in without question? They ate in silence for a few minutes before Ethan spoke. "Where are you headed?" Rosa pushed eggs around her plate. "Nowhere in particular, just moving on." Ethan nodded, accepting her vague answer without pressing. "And you?" she asked, more to be polite than out of real curiosity. "You've lived here long?" "All my life. It's my family's farm." "You run it alone?" Something flickered across his face, a shadow of old pain. "Yes, for the past 5 years." Rosa sensed there was more to that story, but she didn't ask. Everyone had things they didn't want to talk about. She certainly did. "What do you grow?" she asked instead. "Bit of everything. Corn, soybeans, got an apple orchard too, and some livestock, chickens, a few cows, couple of horses." "Sounds like a lot of work for one person." Ethan shrugged. "I manage." After dinner, Ethan showed her to the guest room upstairs. It was simple but clean, with a double bed, dresser, and a small desk by the window. "Bathrooms across the hall," he said, standing in the doorway. "If you need anything, I'm at the end of the hall." "This is great." "Thank you." Rosa set her backpack on the floor. "Really?" Ethan nodded. "Good night, Rosa." "Good night, Ethan." After he left, Rosa sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the rain pounding against the roof and windows. The storm had arrived in full force, wind howling around the old farmhouse. For the first time in months, she felt safe. It was an unfamiliar feeling, and she wasn't sure she trusted it. But for tonight, at least, she had a roof over her head and a full stomach. Tomorrow would take care of itself. Ethan lay awake in his bed, listening to the storm and thinking about the woman sleeping down the hall. There was a story there. He could see it in her eyes, in the way she carried herself, like someone who expected the world to turn against her at any moment. Not that it was any of his business. She'd be gone in the morning, and things would go back to normal. His quiet, predictable life would continue as it had for the past 5 years. Still, as he drifted off to sleep, he found himself hoping the storm would last a little longer than forecast. Rosa woke to sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, she didn't know where she was, panic rising in her chest. Then she remembered the farmhouse, the quiet man who'd taken her in. She got up and looked out the window. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clear blue sky and wet fields that sparkled in the morning light. She could see the expanse of the farm now, acres of land stretching toward distant hills, a red barn, fenced pastures where cows grazed. Her clothes were folded neatly on the chair by the door, clean and dry. Ethan must have brought them up while she slept. She changed quickly, packed her few belongings and headed downstairs. She found Ethan in the kitchen, cooking breakfast. The smell of coffee and bacon filled the air. "Good morning," he said, glancing up at her. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I have in months," Rosa admitted. "Thank you for the clothes." He nodded toward the table, where a place was already set. "Breakfast?" Rosa hesitated. She should leave. That had been the plan. Get in, get out, keep moving. But her stomach growled at the smell of food, and she found herself sitting down. "The roads are flooded," Ethan said, as he placed a plate of food in front of her. "Storm was worse than they predicted." "Oh." Rosa looked out the window. "So I'm stuck here?" "For a day or two, probably, unless you were planning to swim." There was the faintest hint of humor in his voice, so subtle she almost missed it. "I could help out," she offered impulsively. "Around the farm, I mean. To earn." "Fi keep." Ethan studied her for a moment. "You don't have to do that." "I want to." Rosa met his gaze directly. "I don't take charity." Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. "All right," he said finally. "I could use an extra pair of hands cleaning up after the storm." One day turned into 2. 2 days turned into a week. The roads cleared, but Rosa stayed. Each morning she told herself she would leave, and each day she found a reason to stay just one more night. There was always more work to be done. Fences to mend, animals to feed, crops to tend. Ethan never asked her to stay, but he never asked her to leave either. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side during the day, sharing quiet meals. In the evening, Rosa learned the routine of the farm quickly. She was no stranger to hard work, and there was something satisfying about the physical labor, the ache in her muscles at the end of the day, the tangible results of her efforts. More surprising was how comfortable she felt in Ethan's presence. He wasn't much for conversation, but his silence never felt awkward or threatening. It was restful being around someone who didn't demand anything from her, not explanations, not her past, not even her future plans. She learned to read his expressions, to understand the slight changes in his usually stoic face, the barely there smile when she managed to collect eggs without getting pecked by the bad-tempered hen, the flash of concern when she struggled with a heavy load of hay, the quiet approval when she successfully fixed the broken tractor that had been giving him trouble. And sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. Something like wonder, or perhaps bewilderment, as if he couldn't quite figure out how she had ended up in his carefully ordered life. For Ethan, having Rosa on the farm was like watching color slowly seep back into a world that had been gray for too long. He hadn't realized how accustomed he'd become to silence until her voice filled the rooms of his house. She didn't talk much about herself, but she asked questions about the farm, about the town, about his family photos, though she never asked about the blonde woman, as if sensing that was a door better left closed. And she worked harder than anyone he'd ever met, taking on tasks without complaint, learning quickly, never giving up even when things got difficult. "You don't have to prove anything," he told her one evening, after she'd spent hours helping him repair damage to the barn roof. Rosa looked up from her dinner, a question in her eyes. "You work like someone's going to send you away if you stop," he explained. The most words he'd strung together at once since she'd arrived. She was quiet for a long moment. "Old habits," she finally said. Ethan nodded, understanding more than she probably realized. That night, As he lay in bed listening to the soft sounds of Rosa moving around in the guest room, his guest room, though it was starting to feel like hers, Ethan admitted to himself that he didn't want her to leave. It had been a long time since he'd wanted anyone around, a long time since anyone had made him feel anything but the dull acceptance that had become his life. But Rosa, with her quiet determination and guarded eyes, had somehow slipped past his defenses. She made him remember what it was like to care about someone else, to worry about whether they were eating enough or sleeping well or pushing themselves too hard. It scared him, this feeling, because caring meant risking loss, and he'd lost enough already. 2 weeks after Rosa arrived at Three Pines Farm, Mrs. Halloway from the general store in town raised her eyebrows at Ethan when he came in for supplies. "Heard you've got company. Staying with you," she said, not even pretending it was anything but the nosiest of inquiries. News traveled fast in small towns, even when the farms were spread far apart. Ethan should have known better than to think Rosa's presence would go unnoticed. "Yes," he said simply, placing his items on the counter. Mrs. Halloway waited, clearly expecting more information. When none was forthcoming, she pressed on. "Pretty young thing, I heard. Tommy Davies said he saw her helping you with the fencing last week." Ethan said nothing, counting out cash for his purchases. "Well," Mrs. Halloway sniffed, "people are talking, you know. A young woman staying with you, all alone out there. Rosa is my farmhand." Ethan cut her off, his voice level but with a steely edge that wasn't usually there. "And what happens on my property isn't anyone's business but mine." He took his change and left, the bell above the door jingling cheerfully behind him. When he got back to the farm, Rosa was in the chicken coop, collecting eggs. She looked up. When his truck pulled in, a smile starting to form before she caught sight of his face. "What's wrong?" she asked as he approached. Ethan shook his head. "Nothing. Just town gossip." Rosa's face closed off immediately. "About me?" It wasn't a question. "People talk," Ethan said with a shrug. "It doesn't matter." But he could see that it did matter to Rosa. She handed him the basket of eggs and stepped back. "Maybe I should go," she said quietly. "I've stayed too. Long already?" "No." The word came out more forcefully than he'd intended. He took a breath. "No," he repeated, calmer now. "Unless you want to." Rosa looked at him for a long moment, searching his face as if trying to read something there. "I don't want to cause problems for you," she finally said. "You're not." Ethan held her gaze. "I want you to stay." He'd never said it before, had never quite admitted it to himself, let alone to her. But now that the words were out, he knew they were true. He wanted her to stay. He wanted her presence in his house, her help on his farm, her quiet company at his table. Rosa's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, Ethan thought he'd said too much. But then she nodded once, a small movement that nonetheless lifted a weight from his chest. "Okay," she said, "I'll stay for now." As autumn deepened around them, Rosa began to feel a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. The work was hard but satisfying. The days had a rhythm to them, a predictability that was comforting after so many months of uncertainty. And then there was Ethan. Steady, quiet Ethan, who asked for nothing but offered everything. Shelter, work, respect. Sometimes she caught him looking at her with an expression that made her heart beat faster, but he never pushed, never presumed. It scared her, how easy it would be to get used to this, to start believing that this could be permanent. Because nothing in her life had ever been permanent, especially not the good things. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Ethan spoke up unexpectedly. "Winter's coming," he said, his voice casual. "Gets cold here." Rosa nodded, pulling her jacket closer around her. The October air already had a bite to it. "I was thinking," Ethan continued, staring out at the horizon rather than at her, "if you're planning to stay through winter, we should get you some warmer clothes. Proper boots, too." Rosa felt something catch in her throat. Planning to stay through winter. As if it were a given that she would be here that long, as if this temporary arrangement was becoming something else. "I don't know if I'll be here that long," she said automatically, the words coming out before she could stop them. Ethan nodded, his expression unchanged. "Just in case," he said. They sat in silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon, leaving behind a sky full of stars. "My brother died 5 years ago," Ethan said suddenly. "That's him in the photo with me." Rosa turned to look at him, surprised by the unexpected revelation. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Ethan nodded, still looking at the stars. "Car accident, drunk driver, Matt was only 23. He fell silent again, and Rosa waited, sensing there was more. "3 months before that, my fiancée left, Claire." He gestured vaguely toward the house, and Rosa knew he was referring to the blonde woman in the photograph. "Said she couldn't handle farm life after all, too isolated, too much work." He paused. "Too boring, maybe." "I'm sorry," Rosa said again, not knowing what else to say. Ethan shrugged. It was a long time ago, but Rosa could hear the pain still there, buried but not gone. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked gently. Ethan finally turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Because you've been here for 2 weeks, and I don't know anything about you. Seemed fair to offer something of myself first." Rosa felt her heart hammering in her chest. This was the moment, the invitation she'd been both waiting for and dreading. The chance to share her story, to trust someone with her past. She took a deep breath and looked back at the stars. "My parents died when I was 18, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Car accident, like your brother. I had to drop out of college, take care of my younger sister." Ethan said nothing, just listened. "I got a job, worked hard, put Lily through school, and then I met someone. David." She swallowed hard. "I thought he loved me. I thought we were building a life together." The memory still had the power to hurt, to make her feel small and foolish. "He was married, had been the whole time. When I found out..." She shook her head. "I confronted him, it got ugly. His wife found out too. There was a scene, public. Everyone in town knew. She could still hear the whispers, see the pitying looks. Couldn't stay there after that, so I left. Been moving around ever since." She glanced at Ethan. "That's the short version anyway." Ethan nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." Those simple words, free of judgment or pity, loosened something in Rosa's chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could stop running. As the evening chill deepened around them, Ethan stood and offered her his hand. "Come on," he said. "It's getting cold." Rosa took his hand and let him help her up. And if their hands stayed linked a moment longer than necessary, neither of them mentioned it. As October gave way to November, the farm transformed. The leaves on the trees turned brilliant shades of red and gold before falling to carpet the ground. The days grew shorter, the nights colder. The harvest was in full swing, keeping both Ethan and Rosa busy from dawn until dusk. Rosa had never worked so hard in her life, but she'd never felt more satisfied either. There was something deeply rewarding about bringing in the crops they'd tended, about seeing the results of their labor stored safely in the barn and silo. "Good year," Ethan commented one evening as they sat at the kitchen table reviewing the day's work. "Better than last," Rosa smiled, taking a sip of her tea. "Is that your way of saying I'm good luck?" The corner of Ethan's mouth twitched upward. Maybe. These small moments of warmth between them were becoming more frequent. Rosa found herself looking forward to them, to the quiet evenings when the work was done, and they could just be together, talking or sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. She'd been at Three Pines Farm for over a month now, longer than she'd stayed anywhere since leaving her hometown. The thought should have frightened her, getting attached to a place, to a person. But somehow with Ethan, it didn't. He never pushed, never assumed, never made her feel like she owed him anything. "I was thinking of going into town tomorrow," Ethan said, breaking into her thoughts. "Need supplies, and you still need those winter clothes." Rosa nodded. She'd been avoiding town, not wanting to face the inevitable curiosity and gossip, but she couldn't hide forever. "I'll come with you," she said. Ethan looked slightly surprised but pleased. "Good, we'll go after morning chores." The town of Pine Ridge was small, one main street with a handful of stores, a diner, a church, and not much else. As Ethan parked, His truck in front of the general store, Rosa felt her anxiety rising. "You okay?" Ethan asked, noticing her tension. "Fine," Rosa said, squaring her shoulders. "Just not used to small towns anymore." They entered the store together, a bell jingling above the door. The woman behind the counter, plump, grey-haired, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, looked up and smiled broadly. "Ethan Calder, twice in 1 month. I'm starting to think you miss my company, Mrs. Halloway." Ethan nodded politely. "This is Rosa Mendez. She's working with me at the farm." Mrs. Halloway's eyes gleamed with interest as she looked Rosa over. "Well, isn't that nice? Always said that place was too much for one person to handle." Rosa forced a smile, feeling like she was being assessed and catalogued for later gossip sessions. "We need some winter supplies," Ethan said, clearly trying to redirect Mrs. Halloway's attention. "Boots, coat, gloves." Of course, of course. "Women's. Things are in the back corner." Mrs. Halloway came around the counter. "Let me show you, dear." Rosa followed the older woman to the back of the store, leaving Ethan to gather the other supplies they needed. "So," Mrs. Halloway said, once they were out of earshot, "you've been at Three Pines for a while now." It wasn't a question, but Rosa answered anyway. "Yes, about a month." Mrs. Halloway pulled a heavy coat from a rack. "Ethan's kept to himself since his brother died, and that business with Claire." She let the sentence hang, clearly fishing for a reaction. "He told me about that," Rosa said simply. Mrs. Halloway's eyebrows shot up. "Did he now? Well, that's something." She handed Rosa the coat. "Try this on, should be your size." Rosa slipped the coat on. It was warm and sturdy, if not particularly stylish. "It's good to see him coming back to life a bit," Mrs. Halloway continued, her voice softening slightly. "He was always such a good boy. It wasn't right how he shut himself away after all that happened." Rosa looked at the older woman, reassessing her. Maybe there was genuine concern beneath the nosiness. "He's a good man," Rosa said. Mrs. Halloway smiled, patting Rosa's arm. "Yes, he is one of the best." She turned to a shelf of boots. "Now, what size do you wear?" By the time they rejoined Ethan at the front of the store, Rosa had a new coat, boots, gloves, and several warm sweaters. Mrs. Halloway had thawed considerably, treating Rosa with something approaching warmth. "You two come back soon," she called, as they left the store. "And Rosa, you make sure he brings you to the Thanksgiving festival next week. Whole town turns out for it." In the truck, Rosa looked at Ethan. "Thanksgiving festival?" Ethan shrugged. "Town tradition. Food, music, the usual. Do you go?" "Not for a few years," he admitted. Rosa nodded, understanding. After losing his brother and fiancé, social events would have been difficult. "We could go," she suggested tentatively. "If you want to." Ethan glanced at her, surprise and something else. Hope, maybe, flickering in his eyes. "Maybe," was all, he said, but Rosa could tell he was considering it. They stopped at the diner for lunch before heading back to the farm. The place was half full, and several heads turned when they walked in. Rosa felt the weight of curious stares, but Ethan seemed oblivious, leading her to a booth by the window. A waitress approached, smiling warmly. "Ethan, haven't seen you in ages." "Hi, Sarah," Ethan replied. "This is Rosa." "Rosa, this is Sarah Miller. We went to school together." "Nice to meet you," Sarah said, her smile genuine. "What can I get you two?" they ordered, and Sarah left them with a friendly wink that made Rosa wonder if there had ever been something between her and Ethan. "Old girlfriend?" she asked lightly. Ethan looked startled. "Sarah?" "No, just friends." Rosa nodded, feeling oddly relieved. Their food arrived quickly, and they ate in comfortable silence. Rosa was aware of the occasional glances from other diners, but no one approached them. As they were finishing, the bell above the door jingled, and a well-dressed man entered the diner. He was handsome in a polished way, with carefully styled hair and an expensive watch glinting on his wrist. Ethan's expression darkened slightly. "Who's that?" Rosa asked quietly. "James Bennett," Ethan replied. "Owns the bank in town, tried to buy my land last year when crop prices dropped." Rosa studied the man with new interest. He was making his way around the diner, stopping to chat with various patrons, clearly a man who enjoyed being seen and heard. Then his eyes landed on their table, and his face lit up with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ethan Calder," he said, approaching their booth. "Don't often see you in town these days." Ethan nodded curtly. "James." Bennett's gaze shifted to Rosa, his smile widening. "And who's this lovely lady?" "Rosa Mendez," she answered, before Ethan could, extending her hand. Always better to face these types directly in her experience. "James Bennett," he replied, taking her hand and holding it a moment longer than necessary. "A pleasure to meet you, Rosa. Are you new in town?" "I'm working at Three Pines," Rosa said, gently extracting her hand. "Ah." Bennett's eyes gleamed with interest. "Well, if you ever decide you want a job with better prospects, the bank is always looking for smart people." Rosa felt Ethan tense beside her. "I'm happy where I am, thanks," she said firmly. Bennett smiled, not at all discouraged. "Well, the offer stands, and you both should come to the Thanksgiving festival next week. The whole town will be there." "We're considering it," Ethan said, standing up. "We should get back to the farm." Bennett stepped back, still smiling. Of course. Lovely to meet you, Rosa. Hope to see you again soon." As they walked out of the diner, Rosa could feel Bennett's eyes on them. "I don't like that man," she said once they were in the truck. Ethan's mouth quirked in what was almost a smile. "Makes two of us." Back at the farm, as they unloaded their supplies, Rosa felt a strange sense of contentment wash over her. This place, Ethan's place, was starting to feel like home. The thought both comforted and terrified her. "You're quiet," Ethan observed, as they carried the bags into the house. Rosa shrugged. "Just thinking. About town, the people, about everything." Rosa set her bags down in the kitchen. "About staying here." Ethan went still, his eyes finding hers. "And?" Rosa took a deep breath. "I'd like to stay, through winter at least, if that's okay." The relief that flooded Ethan's face was so clear it made her heart ache. "Yes," he said simply. "That's okay." The days leading up to the Thanksgiving festival were busy ones on the farm. There were repairs to be made before winter set in fully, animals to prepare for the cold months ahead, 100 small tasks that kept them working from sunrise to sunset. But the evenings were theirs, quiet hours spent by the fire, talking or reading or simply being together. Rosa found herself opening up more, sharing stories of her childhood, her sister Lily, the dreams she'd once had before life took its unexpected turns. And Ethan talked too, more than he had in years, he admitted. He told her about growing up on the farm with his brother, about his parents who had died when he was in his early 20s, about the plans he and Claire had made before she decided farm life wasn't for her after all. "Do you ever hear from her?" Rosa asked one night. Ethan shook his head. "She moved to Chicago, got married a couple years ago, according to Mrs. Halloway." "Do you still miss her?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "I missed what I thought we had," he finally said. "But that wasn't real, not for her anyway." Rosa nodded, understanding all too well. "That's how I feel about David sometimes, like I'm mourning something that never really existed." Ethan's eyes met hers, and in them she saw recognition, the shared understanding of what it meant to be betrayed by someone you loved. "It gets better," he said softly. "Does it?" He reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. "Yes." The day of the Thanksgiving festival dawned clear and cold. They decided to go, partly because Rosa was curious, and partly because Ethan seemed to feel it was time to stop avoiding town events. The festival was held in the town square, which had been transformed with strings of lights, food stalls, and a small stage where a local band was playing country music. The whole town seemed to be there, milling around, eating, drinking, and catching up with neighbors. Rosa felt nervous as they approached, aware of the curious glances thrown their way. But Ethan's steady presence beside her was reassuring. "Ethan." "Rosa," Mrs. Halloway waved enthusiastically from a booth selling homemade pies. "Come try my apple pie, Blue Ribbon winner 3 years running." They made their way over, and Mrs. Halloway promptly cut them each a generous slice. "On the house," she insisted when Ethan tried to pay. "It's so good to see you here, Ethan. It's been too long." As they moved through the festival, Rosa was surprised by how many people greeted Ethan warmly. He'd given her the impression that he was isolated, but it seemed the town still considered him one of their own, despite his self-imposed exile. "The Calders have been part of this community for generations," Sarah explained when they stopped at her family's booth, where she was serving hot cider. "Everyone was heartbroken for Ethan when Matt died. We all tried to help, but I pushed everyone away," Ethan finished for her, his voice matter-of-fact. Sarah smiled sadly. "You needed time. We understood." They continued through the festival, stopping to talk with various townspeople. Rosa was introduced over and over as Ethan's farmhand, or sometimes just as Rosa, who's staying at Three Pines. She could see the speculation in people's eyes, but most were polite enough not to ask directly about the nature of their relationship, which was just as well, because Rosa wasn't sure she could define it herself. They weren't just employer and employee anymore, but they weren't exactly friends either. Or rather, they were more than friends, but less than something else. Something Rosa wasn't ready to name. As evening fell and the lights around the square twinkled to life, the band started playing slower songs. Couples moved to the open space in front of the stage to dance. "Want to get some food?" Ethan asked, gesturing toward the food stalls. Rosa nodded, and they were heading in that direction when James Bennett stepped into their path, champagne glass in hand. "Ethan, Rosa, so glad you could make it." His smile was as polished as his shoes. "Rosa, would you care to dance?" Rosa hesitated, caught off guard. "Oh, just one dance," Bennett pressed, holding out his hand. "I promise not to step on your toes." Rosa glanced at Ethan, who had gone very still beside her. His face was unreadable. "Go ahead," he said quietly. "I'll get us some food." Before Rosa could protest, Ethan had walked away, leaving her with Bennett. With a sigh, she took Bennett's offered hand. "One dance," she agreed. Bennett led her to the dance floor, placing his hand on her waist with practiced ease. "So," he said as they began to move to the music, "how are you finding life at Three Pines?" "It's good," Rosa replied, keeping her answers. "Short, hoping to discourage conversation. Must be quite different from what you're used to," Bennett pressed. "Where did you say you were from?" "I didn't." Bennett chuckled. "Mysterious. I like that." He pulled her slightly closer. "But seriously, a beautiful woman like you must have better options than farm work." Rosa stiffened. "I like farm work, and I like working with Ethan." "Ah, yes. Ethan." Bennett's smile took on a knowing edge. "He's been alone up there for a long time. I can see why he'd want to keep you around." Rosa stopped dancing, stepping back from Bennett's hold. "Excuse me?" Bennett held up his hands in a placating gesture. "No offense intended. I just meant that Three Pines is a lot of work for one person. Two makes more sense." But his eyes told a different story, and Rosa felt her temper rising. "Ethan has been nothing but respectful and kind to me," she said, her voice low but firm, "which is more than I can say for some people." She turned to walk away, but Bennett caught her arm. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "That came out wrong. Please, finish the dance with me." Rosa hesitated, then shook her head. "I should get back to Ethan." Bennett's grip on her arm tightened slightly. "He doesn't own you, you know." "Let go of my arm," Rosa said evenly. "Is there a problem here?" Ethan's voice came from behind her, calm but with an edge of steel. Rosa felt relief wash over her. Bennett released her arm immediately, his charm back in place. "No problem at all. Just getting to know your lovely employee." The way he said employee made Rosa's skin crawl. "Rosa?" Ethan looked at her, concern in his eyes. "I'm ready to go," she said. Ethan nodded, placing a protective hand on the small of her back as they turned away from Bennett. "Ethan," Bennett called after them, "don't forget my offer still stands. If you ever decide to sell the farm, I won't." Ethan cut him off without turning around. They walked in silence back to the truck, both lost in their own thoughts. It wasn't until they were driving back to the farm that Rosa spoke. "He offered me a job at the bank." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Are you considering it?" "No," Rosa said firmly. "But he seemed to think I might be persuaded." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Bennett's used to getting what he wants. Well, he's not getting the farm, and he's not getting me." The words came out more forcefully than Rosa intended. Ethan glanced at her, something like hope flickering in his eyes. No? No, Rosa confirmed softly. The rest of the drive passed in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now, expectant, charged with unspoken feelings. When they reached the farm, Ethan turned off the engine but made no move to get out of the truck. Instead, he turned to face Rosa. "I want you to stay," he said, his voice low and serious. "Not just as my farmhand, not just through winter." Rosa's heart hammered in her chest. "What are you saying, Ethan?" "I'm saying that these past 2 months with you here, it's been good, better than good." He ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find the right words. "I'm saying I care about you, Rosa, and I hope you might care about me, too." Rosa felt tears prick her eyes. It had been so long since anyone had cared about her, truly cared. So long since she'd allowed herself to care in return. "I do," she whispered. "I do care about you." Ethan reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then stay. Not because you have nowhere else to go, not because you need a job. Stay because you want to be here with me." Rosa leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "The last time I trusted someone—" "I know," Ethan said softly. "I'm scared too. But I think it might be worth it." He leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. But Rosa didn't want to pull away. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. December brought snow to Three Pines Farm, transforming the fields into a glistening white landscape. Inside the farmhouse, things had changed too. Rosa had moved from the guest room to Ethan's room, though they were taking things slowly, both still cautious with their hearts. They settled into a new routine, working together during the short winter days, spending the long evenings planning for spring planting, talking about improvements they wanted to make to the farm, dreams they were starting to dare to share. Rosa had called her sister Lily for the first time in months, telling her about Ethan and the farm, inviting her to visit in the spring. It felt good to reconnect, to start rebuilding the bridges she'd burned when she'd run away from her problems. "I can't believe how much things have changed," she said to Ethan one evening as they sat by the fire. 3 months ago I was sleeping in bus stations and working in diners." Ethan took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles. "Do you ever miss it? The freedom of moving around?" Rosa considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but it wasn't really freedom. I was running, not exploring." Ethan nodded, understanding. "Besides," Rosa continued, "I have everything I need right here." Ethan smiled, a real full smile that transformed his face and made Rosa's heart skip a beat. Those smiles were becoming more frequent, and she treasured each one. "I love you," he said quietly, the words still new enough to make both of them a little breathless. Rosa leaned over to kiss him. "I love you too." The phone rang, interrupting the moment. Ethan got up to answer it, and Rosa watched the fire, contentment warming her more than the flames. But when Ethan returned, his face was troubled. "What is it?" Rosa asked, instantly alert. "That was Mrs. Halloway," Ethan said slowly. "She said, 'There's a man in town asking about you. Said he's your boyfriend, looking for you.'" Rosa felt the blood drain from her face. "David," she whispered. Ethan nodded grimly. "She told him she'd never heard of you, but she wanted to warn us." Rosa stood up, panic rising in her chest. "I need to go, I need to—" "Rosa!" Ethan caught her hands, his voice steady. "Stop, you don't need to run anymore." "You don't understand," Rosa said, pulling away. "David he doesn't like to lose, and in his mind I belong to him." "You don't belong to anyone," Ethan said firmly. "Except yourself." Rosa shook her head, tears threatening. "He'll cause trouble. He always does. Then we'll face it together." Ethan stepped closer, taking her hands again. "I'm not letting you face him alone." Rosa looked up into Ethan's eyes and saw nothing but resolve and love. It gave her strength. "Okay," she said shakily. "Together." Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Together," he agreed. But as Rosa rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, she couldn't shake the fear that her past was about to destroy the future she'd just begun to believe in. The next morning, Rosa woke early, her mind racing with worry. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Ethan, and went downstairs to make coffee. As she stood by the kitchen window, watching the sun rise over the snow-covered fields, she tried to decide what to do. Part of her still wanted to run, to pack her few belongings and disappear before David could find her, before he could bring his particular brand of chaos into this peaceful life she'd found. But another part of her, a stronger part, was tired of running, tired of letting David's ghost chase her from place to place. The sound of Ethan's footsteps on the stairs broke into her thoughts. He came into the kitchen, hair tousled from sleep, eyes concerned. "You okay?" he asked, coming to stand beside her at the window. Rosa nodded. "Just thinking about him." It wasn't a question, but Rosa answered anyway. "Yes." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "You never really told me what happened with him." Rosa sighed, turning to face Ethan. "It's not a pretty story. I want to know," Ethan said simply. "If I'm going to help you face him, I need to understand what we're dealing with." Rosa nodded. "That was fair. I met David 4 years ago," she began, pouring them each a cup of coffee. "He came into the bank where I was working. Charming, successful, attentive." She gave a bitter laugh. "Everything a girl could want, right?" Ethan said nothing, just waited for her to continue. "We started dating. He was intense, always wanting to know where I was, who I was with. I thought it meant he cared." She shook her head at her own naivety. "He was married the whole time, had a wife and 2 kids in the next town over." "How did you find out?" Ethan asked quietly. "His wife called me," Rosa said, the memory still painful. "She'd found my number on his phone. Wanted to know who I was." She took a sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts. "When I confronted David, he didn't deny it. He just laughed. Said his wife didn't understand him, that what we had was special." Rosa could still see the mocking smile on David's face, still feel the shock and betrayal that had left her breathless. "I told him it was over. He didn't take it well." She looked down into her coffee. "He started showing up at my work, my apartment, sending flowers, gifts, calling at all hours. When I changed my number, he'd find the new one somehow." "Did you go to the police?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with anger. "Yes, they took a report, but there wasn't much they could do. He never threatened me, never did anything they could arrest him for." Rosa sighed. "Then one day his wife came to my workplace, made a scene, called me every name in the book. I got fired." "That's not fair," Ethan protested. "No, but it happened," Rosa shrugged. "After that, things got worse. Someone slashed my tires. My apartment was broken into, though nothing was taken. I started getting anonymous calls in the middle of the night." "David?" "I could never prove it," Rosa said. "But who else?" "My sister. Was worried, I was scared, so I left. Changed my name. Mendez is my mother's maiden name. Started moving around, never staying in one place too long." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd told him. "And now he's found you," he finally said. Rosa nodded, fear clenching her stomach. "Now he's found me." Ethan set down his coffee cup and took her hands in his. "Listen to me, Rosa. You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Rosa looked up into his steady gaze and felt her fear recede, just a little. "I won't let him drive me away again," she said, as much to herself as to Ethan. "This is my home now. You are my home." Ethan's eyes softened and he leaned down to kiss her gently. "Yes," he said, "and no one's going to take that away from us." But even as she returned his kiss, Rosa couldn't silence the small voice in the back of her mind that whispered, "David always gets what he wants. Always." The next few days passed in tense anticipation. Rosa jumped at every sound, tensed at every car that drove past the farm. Ethan tried to reassure her, but she could see the worry in his eyes too. "Maybe he's given up," Ethan suggested one morning as they fed the animals. "Maybe Mrs. Halloway convinced him you weren't here." Rosa shook her head. "David doesn't give up. If he's looking for me, he'll find me." As if her words had summoned him, they heard the sound of a car coming up the driveway later that afternoon. Rosa was in the kitchen baking bread, a skill Ethan's mother had taught him, and he had passed on to her. The familiar routine usually calmed her, but now her hands froze in the dough. Ethan came in from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. Their eyes met and no words were needed. They both knew who it was. "Stay here," Ethan said, his voice gentle but firm. "No." Rosa wiped her hands on her apron. "I need to face him." Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, but after a moment he nodded. "Together, then." They walked to the front door just as the doorbell rang. Ethan opened it, and Rosa's breath caught in her throat. David stood on the porch, looking exactly as she remembered, handsome in a slick, calculated way, with dark hair perfectly styled and a smile that could charm anyone who didn't know better. He wore an expensive coat and leather gloves, looking out of place against the backdrop of the farm. His smile widened when he saw Rosa. "There you are," he said, as if they'd just been playing a game of hide and seek. "I've been looking all over for you, baby." Rosa felt Ethan tense beside her. "What do you want, David?" she asked, proud that her voice didn't shake. "What do I want?" David laughed, the sound setting Rosa's teeth on edge. "I want to take you home, of course. This little adventure of yours has gone on long enough, don't you think?" "This is my home," Rosa said firmly, "and I'm not going anywhere with you." David's smile faltered slightly, his eyes hardening. "Don't be ridiculous. You don't belong here." His gaze flickered to Ethan, dismissive. "Playing farmer with your new boyfriend? Come on, Rosa. This isn't you." "You don't know the first thing about who I am," Rosa said, anger replacing her fear. "You never did." David's expression darkened. "I know that you're mine," he said, his voice dropping, "and I don't share what's mine." Ethan stepped forward, his large frame blocking David's view of Rosa. "I think you should leave," he said quietly. David looked Ethan up and down, seemingly unimpressed despite the fact that Ethan towered over him. "And you are?" "Ethan Calder. This is my farm. And Rosa is right. She's not going anywhere with you." David's smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ethan, nice to meet you. I'm David Winters." He held out his hand. Ethan didn't take it. David shrugged, unperturbed. "Look, I understand. Rosa is captivating, but she and I have history. We belong together." He looked past Ethan to Rosa. "Tell him, baby. Tell him about all our plans." "We never had plans," Rosa said, stepping up beside Ethan, "and we have no history. Just a lie you told me for months while your wife and children waited at home." David's face hardened. "That's in the past. I've changed. I left Karen. I'm free now, and I've come to take you back where you belong." "I belong here," Rosa insisted. David laughed again, the sound cold. "Here? On this rundown farm in the middle of nowhere? Please, Rosa. You were meant for better things. Remember all the places we talked about going? The life we could have, the life you made up," Rosa corrected. "None of it was real." "It can be real now," David pressed. "I have money. I can give you everything you've ever wanted." "The only thing I want is for you to leave," Rosa said. "I'm happy here, with Ethan." David's expression changed then, the charming facade dropping, a way to reveal something cold and calculating. "Is that so?" he said softly. "Well, we'll see about that." He turned to Ethan. "You think you know her? You don't. Ask her how many men she's run to since me. Ask her about the money she took from me before she disappeared." "I never took anything from you," Rosa protested. "No." David raised an eyebrow. "What about the $10,000 that went missing from my account right before you vanished? Quite a coincidence, don't you think?" "You're lying," Rosa said, but she could see the seed of doubt he was trying to plant. David smiled, satisfied. "Think about it, farmer boy. Why would a woman like Rosa choose to live on a place like this, doing manual labor, when she could have any man she wanted? What's she really after?" Ethan's face remained impassive. "I think you should leave now," he repeated. David held up his hands in mock surrender. "Fine, I'm going, but this isn't over." He looked at Rosa. "I'll be in town for a while, at the Pine Ridge Inn. When you're ready to stop playing games and come back to real life, you know where to find me." With that, He turned and walked back to his car, a sleek black Mercedes that looked as out of place on the farm as he did. They watched in silence as he drove away, the sound of his engine fading into the distance. Rosa let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Ethan turned to her, confusion in his eyes. "For what?" "For bringing this into your life. For David." Ethan shook his head, taking her hands in his. "You didn't bring anything. He followed you. That's not your fault." Rosa searched his face. "You don't believe what he said? About the money?" "No," Ethan said firmly. "I know you, Rosa. The real you, not whatever version of you he's created in his mind." Rosa felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan pulled her into his arms and she let herself be held, drawing strength from his steady presence. "He won't give up," she said against his chest. "This is just the beginning." Ethan's arms tightened around her. "Then, we'll face whatever comes next. Together." Rosa nodded, but deep down she was afraid. She knew David, knew his determination, his vindictiveness. He wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted, or until he destroyed what she loved out of spite. And what she loved was here, on this farm, with this man who held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. David made good on his promise to stick around. Over the next week, Rosa heard from several people in town that he was asking questions about her, about Ethan, about the farm. Always charming, always seeming reasonable, just a man looking for his girlfriend who had left after a misunderstanding. "He's telling everyone that you're mentally unstable," Sarah told Rosa when she came into the diner for lunch one day. "That you took off during some kind of breakdown and he's worried about you." Rosa felt sick. "And people believe him?" Sarah shrugged. "Some might. He's very convincing. But most folks around here know Ethan wouldn't take up with someone who wasn't solid. And they've seen you two together. It's pretty obvious you're not some unstable runaway." That was small comfort. David was good at planting seeds of doubt, at turning people against each other. It was only a matter of time before he found someone willing to listen. That someone turned out to be James Bennett. Mrs. Halloway caught the farm one evening, her voice hushed with urgency. "That man, your ex, he's been meeting with James Bennett," she told Rosa. "They were at the diner for over an hour today, thick as thieves." Rosa thanked her for the warning, then relayed the information to Ethan. "Bennett's still after the farm," Ethan said grimly. "He must think David can help him get it somehow." "Through me," Rosa said, the realization hitting her. "He thinks he can use me to get to you or to the farm." Ethan's jaw tightened. Let him try. But Rosa couldn't shake the feeling that they were being circled by wolves, just waiting for the right moment to attack. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 days later, they received a letter from Pine Ridge Bank, James Bennett's bank. The letter stated that due to irregularities in Ethan's loan payments, the bank was conducting a review of his mortgage and might need to adjust the terms. "This is ridiculous," Ethan said, reading the letter for the third time. "I've never missed a payment, not once in 5 years." "It's Bennett," Rosa said, "working with David somehow." Ethan crumpled the letter in his fist. "I'll go talk to him tomorrow, sort this out." "I'll come with you," Rosa said immediately. Ethan shook his head. "No. Bennett's looking for leverage. If we both go, he'll know how important you are to me, how much I'd give up to protect you." Rosa wanted to argue, but she could see the logic in his words. Still, the thought of Ethan facing Bennett and possibly David alone made her uneasy. "Be careful," she said. Ethan's expression softened, and he pulled her close. "Always am." The next morning, Rosa watched anxiously as Ethan drove away, headed for town and the bank. She tried to keep busy with farm chores, but her mind kept wandering, imagining confrontations, threats, complications. She was collecting eggs in the chicken coop when she heard a car coming up the driveway. Thinking it was Ethan returning, she hurried out, only to stop short when she saw the black Mercedes. David. He got out of the car, smiling when he saw her. "Hello, Rosa. You look beautiful, as always." Rosa crossed her arms over her chest. "What are you doing here? Ethan's not home." "I know," David said, his smile widening. "That's why I came." I thought we could talk privately. We have nothing to talk about, David sighed as if disappointed in a child. Always so stubborn. It's one of the things I love about you. He took a step closer. And one of the things that drives me crazy. Rosa stood her ground. Say what you came to say, then leave. Fine. David's tone shifted, becoming businesslike. I've been looking into your farmer boyfriend. Did you know his farm is on the brink of foreclosure? That's a lie, Rosa said immediately. Three Pines is doing fine. David raised an eyebrow. Is it? Then why is the bank reviewing his mortgage? Why is he behind on his equipment payments? Rosa faltered. The mortgage review she knew about, but equipment payments. Ethan hadn't mentioned any issues with those. David saw her hesitation and pressed his advantage. He's drowning in debt, Rosa. Another bad season, and he loses everything. Is that really the future you want? Watching everything collapse around? You're making this up, Rosa said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Am I? David pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket and handed it to her. See for yourself. Rosa took the paper reluctantly and unfolded it. It appeared to be a financial statement from Pine Ridge Bank, detailing Ethan's accounts. There were indeed several overdue payments listed, and the farm's operating account showed a balance much lower than Rosa would have expected. Where did you get this? She demanded, looking up at David. He smiled. Let's just say Mr. Bennett was very helpful when I explained my concerns about my girlfriend getting involved with a man on the verge of financial ruin. Rosa's blood boiled. I'm not. Your girlfriend and this, she waved the paper. This is private information. Bennett had no right to share it with you. Maybe not, David conceded with a shrug. But the fact remains, your farmer is in trouble. Deep trouble. Rosa folded the paper and thrust it back at him. If Ethan's having financial difficulties, we'll face them together. David laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. Really, Rosa? You're willing to go down with this sinking ship? He shook his head. I didn't take you for a fool. The only foolish thing I ever did was trust you, Rosa shot back. David's expression darkened. I'm trying to help you, to save you from making another mistake. The only mistake would be listening to anything you have to say. Rosa turned to walk back to the house. Now get off this property before I call the sheriff. Fine, David called after her. Stay here, watch it all fall apart. But when it does, and it will, don't come crying to me. Rosa didn't look back. Even when she heard his car start and drive away. She went into the house and sat at the kitchen table, her mind racing. Could it be true? Was Ethan in financial trouble? He'd never said anything about it, but then again, they'd never really discussed the farm's finances in detail. She knew farming was a precarious business, dependent on weather, crop prices, 100 factors beyond anyone's control. But surely Ethan would have told her if things were as bad as David claimed, unless he was protecting her. Unless he didn't want her to worry. Rosa was still sitting at the table, lost in thought, when Ethan returned. One look at his face told her the meeting with Bennett hadn't gone well. What happened? She asked as he hung up his coat. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of frustration. Bennett's claiming there's been a computer error. Says several of my payments weren't properly recorded. He's investigating, but in the meantime, he's frozen my accounts. Rosa felt cold. Can he do that? Apparently. Ethan sat down heavily, across from her. I called my lawyer. He's looking into it, but it might take time to sort out. David was here, Rosa said quietly. Ethan's head snapped up. What? Are you okay? I'm fine, Rosa assured him. But he showed me something, a financial statement for the farm. He said Bennett gave it to him. Ethan's expression darkened. That's illegal. That's private banking information. I know. But Ethan, Rosa hesitated. It showed overdue payments. A low account balance. Is it true? Is the farm in trouble? Ethan was quiet for a long moment and Rosa's heart sank. Finally, he sighed. It's been a tough couple of years, he admitted. Crop prices are down, expenses are up. I've had to dip into my savings to make ends meet. But it's not as bad as whatever they showed you. Why didn't you tell me? Rosa asked, hurt in her voice. I didn't want to worry you, Ethan said. And honestly, until today, I thought things were starting to turn around. This harvest was good. The projections for spring are positive. He reached across the table to take her hand. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I should have. Rosa squeezed his hand. No more secrets, okay? Whatever we're facing, we face it together. Ethan nodded. No more secrets. So what do we do now? Rosa asked. We fight, Ethan said simply. Bennett's using David to get to the farm. He's wanted this land for years, wants to develop it, build vacation homes or something. And David's using Bennett to get to me, Rosa added. Ethan nodded grimly. They make quite a team. But why freeze your accounts? Rosa wondered. What does that accomplish? It puts pressure on me, Ethan explained. Without access to my accounts, I can't pay my bills, can't buy feed for the animals, can't prepare for spring planting. Bennett's hoping I'll get desperate. Enough to sell. And if you don't, Ethan's expression was grim. Then he'll find another way to squeeze. That's how men like Bennett operate. Rosa felt a chill run down her spine. She knew all too well how men like that operated. David was cut from the same cloth, willing to do whatever it took to get what he wanted. We need a plan, she said, determination replacing her fear. A way to fight back. Ethan smiled, a flash of admiration in his eyes. Any ideas? Rosa thought, for a moment. Bennett's leverage is financial, but what if we went public? What if we told everyone in town what he's doing? Small-town banker using illegal tactics to force a local farmer to sell. Ethan considered it. Could work. Bennett cares about his reputation. And what about David? Rosa asked. How do we handle him? Ethan's expression hardened. I think it's time we found out exactly who David Winters really is and what he's been up to since you left. They put their plan into action the next day. While Ethan went to talk to his lawyer again, armed with what they knew about Bennett sharing private banking information, Rosa called her sister Lily. I need you to look into someone for me, she said after explaining the situation. Lily worked as a paralegal and had access to various databases that could help. This guy sounds like bad news, Lily said. Are you sure you're safe there? I'm safer with Ethan than anywhere else, Rosa assured her. But we need ammunition if we're going to fight David and Bennett. I'll see what I can find, Lily promised. And Rosa? I'm glad you're not running this time, Rosa smiled. Me too. After hanging up, Rosa headed into town. She had her own part of the plan to execute. Her first stop was the diner where Sarah worked. I need your help, Rosa said, sliding into a booth across from Sarah during her break. And it might be a bit unconventional. Sarah's eyes lit up. I'm listening. By the time Rosa left the diner, she had Sarah on board with her plan. Next, she went to see Mrs. Halloway at the general store. My dear, I was wondering when you'd come see me, Mrs. Halloway said, ushering Rosa into the small office at the back of the store. I've been hearing all sorts of things about that ex of yours. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Rosa said. I need your help spreading the truth. Mrs. Halloway's eyes twinkled. Well now, spreading information is what I do best. Rosa's last stop was the local newspaper office, where she spoke with the editor, a serious-looking woman named Martha Jenkins. After hearing Rosa's story and seeing the financial statement David had shown her, which Rosa now suspected might be altered, Martha agreed to look into both Bennett's banking practices and David's background. No promises, Martha cautioned, but if what you're saying is true, people should know about it. By the time Rosa returned to the farm, she felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since David had appeared on their doorstep. They might be outmatched in terms of money and influence, but they had something Bennett and David didn't: the support of the community. Ethan was waiting for her, and he had news of his own. My lawyer thinks we have a case against Bennett for sharing confidential banking information, he said. He's preparing a formal complaint to the Banking Commission. That's great, Rosa said, and I've got the town mobilizing. If Bennett and David want a fight, they've got one. Ethan pulled her into his arms. You're amazing, you know that? Rosa smiled up at him. We're amazing, together. Their moment was interrupted by the phone ringing. Ethan went to answer it, and Rosa could tell from his expression that it was important. That Was Lily, he said after hanging up. She found something on David, something big. What? Rosa asked, heart racing. He's being investigated for embezzlement at his company. Apparently, large sums of money have gone missing over the past year. So Ethan's eyes were bright with the implications. If this is true, he's looking at serious charges, maybe even prison time. Rosa felt a wave of vindication wash over her. So that's why he's so desperate to pin that missing money on me. He's looking for a scapegoat. Exactly, Ethan said. And now we have leverage. Rosa nodded slowly. But we need proof, something concrete. Lily's sending over everything she found, Ethan assured her. We'll have it tomorrow. Rosa felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time since David had appeared, she felt like they might actually win this fight. But as she would soon learn, a desperate man was a dangerous one, and David Winters was very, very desperate. The next day dawned cold and clear. Rosa woke early, unable to sleep with all that was happening. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Ethan, and went downstairs to make coffee. As she waited for the coffee to brew, she looked out the kitchen window at the farm spread out before her. Snow covered the fields, glistening in the early morning light. The barn, the chicken coop, the fenced pastures where the horses and cows would graze in warmer weather, all of it had become home to her in a way no place had been since she'd left her hometown. The thought of losing it, of Ethan losing it, was unbearable. "We won't," she said aloud, making a promise to herself and to the farm. "We're going to fight and we're going to win." The sound of a car coming up the driveway broke into her thoughts. It was too early for visitors. Rosa peered out the window, half expecting to see David's black Mercedes. Instead, she saw a police car. Her heart sank. What now? She hurried to the door, opening it just as the sheriff, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Tom Reynolds, was about to knock. "Morning, Rosa," he said, his expression serious. "Is Ethan around?" "He's still asleep," Rosa said, anxiety building in her chest. "What's this about, Sheriff?" Reynolds looked uncomfortable. "I need to speak with him. It's important." "I'll get him," Rosa said, stepping back to let the sheriff in. "Please wait here." She hurried upstairs and gently shook Ethan awake. "Ethan, the sheriff's here. He wants to talk to you." Ethan was instantly alert. "Did he say what about?" Rosa shook her head. "No, but he looked serious." Ethan pulled on jeans and a sweater and followed Rosa downstairs. Sheriff Reynolds was waiting in the living room, hat in his hands. "Tom," Ethan greeted him. "What brings you out so early?" Reynolds looked from Ethan to Rosa, his expression grim. "I've got a warrant to search the property, Ethan, and I need to ask you some questions." "A warrant?" Ethan repeated, disbelief in his voice. "For what?" "Fraud," Reynolds said, handing Ethan a paper. "James Bennett filed a formal complaint yesterday. Says you've been falsifying loan documents, trying to defraud the bank." Rosa gasped. "That's ridiculous. Bennett's the one who's been freezing Ethan's accounts without cause." Reynolds held up a hand. "I'm just doing my job, Rosa. The warrant's in order. I have to execute it." Ethan read through the document, his face darkening. "This is Bennett's way of putting more pressure on me to sell," he said, looking up at Reynolds. "You know that, right?" Reynolds sighed. "What I know is that I have a valid warrant and I need to search the premises. I'd prefer to do it without the fuss." Ethan handed the warrant back. "Fine, search away. You won't find anything because there isn't anything to find." Reynolds nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "There are deputies waiting outside. I'll try to make this quick and clean." As the sheriff went to signal his deputies, Ethan turned to Rosa. "This is Bennett's doing, and probably David's too." "They're escalating," Rosa agreed, fear and anger warring within her. "They must be getting desperate." "Or they think we are," Ethan said grimly. The next few hours were tense and humiliating as the sheriff and his deputies searched the house and outbuildings. They were respectful but thorough, going through papers, files, even the computer in Ethan's office. Rosa watched helplessly, fury building inside her. This was all because of David, because he couldn't accept that she had moved on, that she had found happiness without him, and now he was trying to destroy that happiness out of pure spite. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Sheriff Reynolds returned to the living room where Ethan and Rosa were waiting. "We're done," he said. "We didn't find anything suspicious." Ethan gave a humorless laugh. "Of course you didn't, because there isn't anything." Reynolds nodded, looking uncomfortable again. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about this, Ethan, but I had to follow procedure." "I understand," Ethan said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Are we done here?" "For now," Reynolds said. "But this investigation is still open. Bennett's provided the bank with some concerning documents. We need to verify their authenticity." "What documents?" Rosa demanded. Reynolds hesitated. "Loan applications with discrepancies, possibly forged signatures." "That's absurd," Ethan said firmly. "I've never falsified any document in my life." "Like I said, we need to verify," Reynolds repeated. "In the meantime, I'd advise you to get a good lawyer." After the sheriff and his deputies had left, Ethan and Rosa sat in stunned silence for several minutes. "What do we do now?" Rosa finally asked. Ethan took her hand. "We stick to the plan. We fight back. Only now we fight harder." Rosa nodded, determination setting her jaw. "Bennett and David want to play dirty? Fine. Let's show them what we're made of." And as they sat there, hands clasped, the resolve between them hardened into something unbreakable. This was their home, their life, and they weren't going to let anyone take it away from them, not Bennett, not David, not anyone. But the fight was just beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. The day after the sheriff's search, Rosa and Ethan put their counterattack into motion. Their first stop was Martha Jenkins at the local newspaper. They brought with them all the documentation they had, the financial statement David had shown Rosa, copies of Ethan's actual bank records that his lawyer had obtained, and the information Lily had sent about David's embezzlement investigation. Martha reviewed everything carefully, her journalist's eyes sharp and assessing. "This is quite a story," she said finally, looking up at them. "A prominent local banker potentially breaking confidentiality laws, working with a man under investigation for embezzlement, all to force a foreclosure on a historic family farm." She smiled grimly. "People are going to be very interested in this." "We need to move quickly," Ethan said. "Bennett's trying to push this fraud investigation against me. If that gains traction—" "Say no more," Martha assured him. "I'll have this ready for tomorrow's edition, and I'll make some calls to verify the embezzlement investigation." Their next stop was Ethan's lawyer, Michael Green, who had his office in a small building just off the town square. "This is serious," Green said after they updated him on the search. "Bennett's playing hardball." "So do we," Ethan replied firmly. Green nodded, a determined glint in his eye. "I've already filed complaints with the State Banking Commission and the FDIC about the shared banking information, and I've prepared a countersuit for harassment and defamation." "Will that be enough?" Rosa asked. "It's a start," Green said, "but we need more. Direct evidence of collusion between Bennett and this David Winters would be ideal." Rosa and Ethan exchanged glances. "That might be difficult to get," Ethan admitted. "Not necessarily," said a voice from the doorway. They all turned to see Sarah, standing there, a folder in her hands and a triumphant smile on her face. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, stepping into the office, "but I think I have something you need to see." She handed the folder to Green, who opened it curiously. Inside were several photographs, clear shots of David and Bennett sitting together at the diner, looking at documents spread on the table between them. "I took these yesterday," Sarah explained. "They were so wrapped up in their plotting they didn't even notice me. And look at this one." She pointed to a particular photo. "You can clearly see that's a copy of Ethan's loan application." Green examined the photo more closely. "You're right. This is evidence of inappropriate sharing of confidential banking information." He looked up at Sarah with new respect. "This is excellent work," Sarah beamed. "There's more. I had my phone on record when I was refilling their coffee. Got about 2 minutes of their conversation." She pulled out her phone. "Listen." She pressed play, and Bennett's voice filled the small office. "Not enough to force a sale yet, but with the fraud investigation, we'll have leverage. Once the property's value drops due to the scandal, I can step in with an offer. The development potential alone is worth millions. David's voice came next. "And what about Rosa? You promised me you'd help get her away from there." "Patience," Bennett replied smoothly. "Once Calder's facing criminal charges, she'll see the light. No woman wants to tie herself to a sinking ship." Green stopped the recording, his expression serious but satisfied. "This changes everything. Direct evidence of conspiracy to defraud and manipulate property values. Bennett could lose his banking license over this." Rosa felt a surge of hope. "So what do we do now?" "Now," Green said with determination, "we go on the offensive." By that evening, the town was buzzing with news. Mrs. Halloway had done her part perfectly, spreading the word about Bennett and David's scheme while Martha prepared her newspaper story. People were outraged, not just for Ethan, whose family had been part of the community for generations, but at the idea that their trusted local banker would engage in such underhanded tactics. Rosa was at the farm, waiting anxiously for Ethan to return from a meeting with Green and Sheriff Reynolds, when she heard a car approaching. Looking out the window, her heart sank when she recognized David's black Mercedes. For a moment she considered not answering the door, but then she straightened her shoulders. She was done running, done hiding. She opened the door before David could knock, standing firmly in the doorway blocking his entry. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. David looked less polished than usual, his hair slightly disheveled, his eyes tense. "We need to talk, Rosa, now. We have nothing to talk about." "Don't be stupid," David snapped, his charm slipping. "You know what's happening. Bennett's building a case against your farmer. He's going to lose everything. This is your last chance." To get out before it all comes crashing down, Rosa crossed her arms. "The only thing crashing down is your little scheme. We know everything, David. About the embezzlement investigation, about your deal with Bennett. It's over." David's face paled. "What are you talking about?" "The newspaper has the whole story. It'll be out tomorrow. And Sheriff Reynolds is probably reviewing the evidence of your conspiracy with Bennett right now." Rosa allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "You picked the wrong town to try your manipulation games in, David." David's expression darkened, fear quickly replaced by anger. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Playing house with your dirt-poor farmer." "But this isn't over, Rosa. Not by a long shot." He took a step toward her and Rosa instinctively stepped back. Something in his eyes frightened her, a desperate, cornered look. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I'm trying to help you, to give you one last chance." "I don't want or need your help," Rosa replied firmly. "Now please leave before Ethan gets back. He's not as patient as I am." David laughed, a harsh sound. "You think I'm afraid of him, your gentle giant farmer?" He shook his head. "You've forgotten who I am, Rosa. What I'm capable of." A chill ran down Rosa's spine. She had indeed forgotten how menacing David could be when things weren't going his way. "What you're capable of is about to land you in serious legal trouble," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your embezzlement scheme is exposed. Your deal with Bennett is falling apart. You should be more worried about yourself than about me." David's eyes narrowed. "So that's how it is. After everything we shared, you're turning on me?" "We never shared anything real," Rosa said. "It was all lies. Your lies." Something in David seemed to snap. His hand shot out, grabbing Rosa's wrist with bruising force. "You're coming with me," he growled. "Right now, before you make an even bigger mess of things." Rosa tried to pull away, but his grip was too strong. Fear pulsed through her, but it was quickly followed by anger. Anger at David for thinking he could control her, for believing he had any right to her. "Let go of me," she said, her voice low but firm. "Or what?" David challenged, tightening his grip. Rosa didn't hesitate. She brought her knee up hard, catching David in the groin. He doubled over with a gasp of pain, releasing her wrist. Rosa immediately stepped back, putting distance between them. "Get off this property," she said, breathing hard. "Now, or I'm calling the police." David straightened slowly, his face contorted with pain and rage. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "I promise you that." He backed away, stumbling slightly, and Rosa watched warily as he got into his car. Only when he had driven away did she allow herself to relax, her knees suddenly weak with the aftermath of adrenaline. She needed to call Ethan. Things were escalating, and David was becoming unpredictable, dangerous even. But before she could reach the phone, she heard another car approaching. Looking out, she saw Bennett's sleek sedan coming up the driveway. What now? Rosa steeled herself for another confrontation and went back to the door. But when Bennett got out of his car, she was surprised to see he looked almost as disheveled as David had. His usual composure cracked, worry etched on his face. "Is Ethan here?" he asked without preamble. "No," Rosa said cautiously. "What do you want?" Bennett ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "I need to talk to him. It's important." "About the fraud allegations you invented?" Rosa asked coldly. Bennett had the grace to look uncomfortable. "It's not what you think. I need to explain—" "Save it for the banking commission," Rosa interrupted. "And for the newspaper. Everyone's going to know what you've been up to by tomorrow." "You don't understand," Bennett insisted. "David Winters is dangerous. He came to me with information about Ethan's farm, offered a partnership in developing the land. It seemed like business." He shook his head. "But there's something wrong with him. The things he's been saying, the way he talks about you." Rosa felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "He's obsessed," Bennett said, looking genuinely troubled now. "At first I thought he just wanted to win you back. But it's more than that. He talks about you like you're his property. And when I suggested backing off after hearing about the embezzlement investigation, he threatened me." Rosa's mouth went dry. This confirmed her worst fears about David. "When did you see him last?" "About an hour ago. He was in a rage. Said something about making sure you couldn't stay here, one way or another." Bennett's eyes showed real concern now. "I think he might do something drastic. That's why I came to warn Ethan." Rosa felt fear twist in her stomach. "He was just here. We argued, and he left angry." Bennett's expression grew alarmed. "Where's Ethan now?" "In town, meeting with his lawyer and the sheriff," Rosa said, already reaching for the phone. "I need to call him." But even as she dialed, she had a terrible feeling it might already be too late. Ethan was driving back to the farm, his mind racing with everything that had happened in the past few hours. The meeting with Sheriff Reynolds had gone better than expected. After reviewing the evidence Green had presented, Reynolds had agreed to open an investigation into Bennett's banking practices. He'd also contacted the authorities in David's hometown about the embezzlement allegations. Things were finally turning in their favor. The fraud accusations against Ethan were being dropped, and Bennett and David were now the ones under scrutiny. All Ethan wanted now was to get back to Rosa, to tell her the good news, to hold her and know that they were going to be okay, that the farm was safe, that their future together was secure. He was so lost in thought that he almost didn't notice the black Mercedes approaching rapidly from behind, headlights flashing. Ethan frowned, slowing to let the car pass. But instead of passing, the Mercedes pulled up right behind him, so close that Ethan could see David's face in his rearview mirror. David honked, gesturing for Ethan to pull over. Ethan shook his head and kept driving. The last thing he wanted was a confrontation with David on a lonely country road. Suddenly, the Mercedes swerved out, pulling alongside Ethan's truck. David rolled down his window, shouting something Ethan couldn't hear. Then, without warning, David jerked his steering wheel to the right, his car slamming into the side of Ethan's truck. The impact sent Ethan's truck skidding toward the edge of the road. He fought to regain control, but David rammed him again. Harder this time. The truck teetered on the shoulder, then plunged down the steep embankment that lined this stretch of the road. Ethan had a moment of weightlessness, of disbelief, before the truck rolled, once, twice, coming to rest on its roof. At the bottom of the ravine, pain exploded through Ethan's body. His vision swam, darkness threatening at the edges. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was David's face, peering down from the top of the embankment, a cold smile on his lips. Rosa paced the farmhouse, anxiety gnawing at her. She tried calling Ethan's cell phone repeatedly, but there was no answer. She'd called Green's office, but Ethan had left over an hour ago. She'd even called Sheriff Reynolds, who promised to send a deputy to look for Ethan along the road from town to the farm. Bennett had left after making his warning, clearly uncomfortable being at the farm without Ethan present. His parting words had been to be careful, that David was not the man Rosa thought she knew, as if she needed that warning. She'd seen the darkness in David long ago, glimpsed it in flashes of anger, in controlling behaviors, in the way he'd stalked her after their breakup. But she'd never imagined he would escalate to physical violence. The memory of his grip on her wrist, the rage in his eyes, sent another shiver through her. Where was Ethan? The drive from town should have taken 20 minutes at most. He should have been home by now. The sound of a car jolted her from her thoughts. She rushed to the window, hope rising. But it wasn't Ethan's truck. It was a police car, and Sheriff Reynolds himself was getting out. Rosa's heart sank. This couldn't be good. She met the sheriff at the door, fear closing her throat. "What is it? Did you find Ethan?" Reynolds' grave expression told her everything before he spoke. "There's been an accident, Rosa. Ethan's truck went off the road." "On Miller's Ridge." Rosa felt the world tilt. "Is he—" She couldn't finish the question. "He's alive," Reynolds said quickly. "But he's hurt pretty bad. They're taking him to County General." "I need to go to him," Rosa said, already reaching for her coat and keys. "I'll drive you," Reynolds offered. "But Rosa, there's something else. This wasn't just an accident. A witness saw another car run Ethan's truck off the road, a black Mercedes." Rosa froze. "David," Reynolds nodded grimly. "We've put out an APB for him, but right now let's get you to Ethan." The drive to the hospital was a blur. Rosa sat in the passenger seat of the sheriff's car, her mind racing with terrible images of Ethan hurt, alone, thinking she didn't know what had happened to him, and beneath the fear was anger, a burning rage toward David, who couldn't stand to see her happy, who would rather destroy than let go. At the hospital, Reynolds led her through the emergency department to a trauma room where doctors and nurses worked over Ethan's still form. Rosa's breath caught at the sight of him, pale, bloodied, a neck brace holding his head immobile, machines beeping around him. "Ethan," she whispered, moving to his side. His eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice. "Rosa," he murmured, his voice weak but clear. "David, I know," she said, taking his hand carefully, mindful of the IV lines. "The sheriff knows too. They're looking for him." Relief flooded Ethan's battered face. "Are you okay? Did he come to the farm?" Even now, hurt as he was, Ethan's first concern was for her. Rosa felt her heart swell with love for this man. "I'm fine," she assured him. "How bad is it?" "Broken ribs, concussion, some internal bleeding they're monitoring," Ethan said, grimacing. "So it could have been worse." A doctor approached, a serious-looking woman with kind eyes. "You must be Rosa," she said. "I'm Dr. Patel. Your husband's going to need surgery to repair some of the internal damage, but his prognosis is good. He's strong and healthy, which helps enormously." "Your husband." Rosa didn't correct her. Instead, she asked, "How long will he be here?" "A few days at least," Dr. Patel replied. "We'll know more after the surgery. Are you staying nearby?" Rosa hesitated. She hadn't thought that far ahead. "She can stay with me," said a voice from the doorway. It was Sarah, eyes wide with concern. "I came as soon as I heard. The whole town's talking about it." Rosa felt a rush of gratitude for this community that had taken her in, that cared about Ethan, that was ready to stand with them. "Thank you," she said to Sarah, "but I need to go back to the farm first. The animals?" "Already taken care of," Sarah assured her. "Mrs. Halloway's son Bobby is over there right now doing the evening chores, and he'll be back in the morning." Rosa felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Sarah said simply. "This is what neighbors do." As they prepared to take Ethan to surgery, Rosa leaned down and kissed him gently. "I'll be here when you wake up," she promised. Ethan squeezed her hand weakly. "I know you will." The next morning, as Rosa sat by Ethan's hospital bed, watching him sleep after his surgery, Sarah brought her a copy of the Pine Ridge Gazette. The headline was bold and damning. "Local banker and out-of-town businessman in conspiracy to force farm sale." The article detailed everything: Bennett's banking violations, David's embezzlement investigation, their plan to pressure Ethan into selling his land. And now there was a new development. David Winters was wanted for attempted murder after running Ethan's truck off the road. The whole town's in an uproar, Sarah told her. Bennett's not showing his face anywhere. His wife says he's consulting with lawyers. And David? Rosa asked. Sarah's expression darkened. No sign of him yet, but every farmer in the county is on the lookout. He won't get far. Rosa nodded, torn between wanting David caught and punished, and fearing what he might do if cornered. She'd seen the desperation in his eyes, the rage. A man like that, with nothing left to lose, was dangerous. Around noon, Sheriff Reynolds came to the hospital to check on Ethan and update them on the search for David. His car was found abandoned at a rest stop about 50 miles north, Reynolds reported. Looks like he might have hitched a ride or had someone pick him up. We've expanded the search and notified neighboring counties. What about the embezzlement? Charges? Rosa asked. His company has officially pressed charges, Reynolds confirmed. There's a warrant out for his arrest in his home state too. Once we find him, he's facing serious time, both for the embezzlement and for what he did to Ethan. Rosa should have felt relief, but instead, she felt a nagging worry. David was still out there somewhere, and she couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't done yet. For the next 2 days, Rosa barely left Ethan's side. He was recovering well, the doctors said, but would need time to heal completely. The community continued to rally around them. People visited with food, offers of help with the farm, words of encouragement. Mrs. Halloway organized a rotation of volunteers to handle the farm chores until Ethan was back on his feet. On the 3rd day, when Ethan was stable enough to be moved from intensive care to a regular room, Rosa finally agreed to go back to the farm briefly to shower and change clothes. Sarah offered to drive her. "You sure you'll be okay alone?" Sarah asked as they pulled up to the farmhouse. "I can wait." "I'll be fine," Rosa assured her. "I won't be long, and then we can go back to the hospital." Sarah nodded. "I'll get some groceries for you to take back to Ethan. Hospital food is terrible. Call me when you're ready." Rosa watched Sarah drive away, then turned to the farmhouse. It felt strange to be there without Ethan, knowing he was hurt, miles away in a hospital bed. But soon he would be home. Soon they would be back to their life together. She let herself in, noting with gratitude that someone had tidied up. There were fresh flowers on the table and a stack of casserole dishes in the refrigerator, the community taking care of its own. Rosa went upstairs to shower and change. As she came back downstairs feeling refreshed, she heard a sound from the kitchen. Thinking Bobby or one of the other volunteers might have come by to check on things, she called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" There was no answer, but she definitely heard movement. Rosa hesitated, a tendril of unease curling through her. She moved cautiously toward the kitchen, and there he was, David, standing by the kitchen table, looking out the window at the snow-covered fields. Rosa froze, her heart hammering in her chest. How had he gotten in? How had he known she would be here? As if sensing her presence, David turned. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. But what frightened Rosa most was the coldness in his gaze. "Hello, Rosa," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I've been waiting for you." Rosa took a step back, her eyes darting to the front door. Could she make it before he caught her? "Don't," David warned, as if reading her thoughts. "I just want to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Rosa said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You need to leave, David. The police are looking for you." "I know," he said, smiling thinly. "I'm quite the celebrity now. Embezzler, conspirator, attempted murderer." He shrugged. "Might as well add kidnapping to the list." Rosa's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "You're coming with me," David said simply. "I have a car waiting, fake IDs. We can be in Canada by tonight." "You're insane," Rosa said, disbelief mixing with her fear. "I'm not going anywhere." "With you." David's smile disappeared. "Yes, you are. I've lost everything because of you, Rosa, my career, my reputation, my freedom. The least you can do is come with me." "None of that is my fault," Rosa argued, trying to keep him talking while she inched toward the door. "You embezzled money. You conspired with Bennett. You ran Ethan's truck off the road. Those were your choices. I did it all for you," David shouted, his composure cracking. "To get you back, to show you that farmer couldn't give you what I can." "And what's that?" Rosa challenged. "A life on the run? Constant fear? That's not what I want, David. It never was." David's expression hardened. "It doesn't matter what you want. Not anymore." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. Rosa's heart seemed to stop. "Now," David said, his voice calm again, terrifyingly so, "you're going to come with me. No arguments, no running." Rosa's mind raced. Sarah would be back soon, but not soon enough. No one knew David was here. No one was coming to help her. She was on her own. "Okay," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Okay, David, I'll come with you." He looked surprised, then suspicious. "Just like that?" Rosa nodded, trying to look defeated. "What choice do I have? You have a gun." David studied her face, looking for deception. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he lowered the gun slightly. "Smart girl," he said. "Go get your coat and don't try anything stupid." Rosa moved slowly toward the coat rack by the front door, her mind frantically searching for a way out. As she put on her coat, her hand brushed against something in the pocket. Ethan's truck keys. She'd picked them up from the hospital, intending to move his truck from the hospital parking lot once it was released from the impound yard. An idea formed. A desperate, dangerous idea. "I'm ready," she said, turning back to David. He gestured with the gun. "Let's go. My car's behind the barn." Rosa nodded, following him out the front door. As they stepped onto the porch, she pretended to stumble, falling to one knee. "Get up," David snapped. "My ankle," Rosa gasped, clutching it. "I think I twisted it." David rolled his eyes in disgust. "Fine. I'll help you." He reached down with his free hand to help her up, the gun momentarily pointed away from her. It was the only chance she would get. Rosa surged upward, ramming her shoulder into David's chest with all her strength. Caught off guard, he stumbled backward, losing his balance on the icy porch steps. He fell, the gun flying from his hand, landing in the snow. Rosa didn't hesitate. She ran not toward the road where David might easily catch her, but toward the barn. She could hear him behind her, cursing, scrambling to his feet. She didn't look back, just ran faster than she ever had in her life. She reached the barn and yanked open the door, slipping inside. There, parked where he'd left it the day of his accident, was Ethan's old tractor. The keys were in her hand and she knew how to drive it. Ethan had taught her during harvest. She climbed up into the seat, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the keys. The barn door burst open, and David stood there, snow in his hair, rage. Contorting his features, he had retrieved the gun. "Get down from there," he ordered. "Now." Rosa's answer was to turn the key. The tractor roared to life, louder than she remembered. David raised the gun, but hesitated. If he shot her, he couldn't take her with him. That moment of hesitation was all Rosa needed. She put the tractor in gear and gunned the engine. The massive machine lurched forward, straight toward David. His eyes widened in shock, and he dove out of the way just in time. But in his haste to avoid the tractor, he lost his footing again, falling hard. The gun skittered across the icy ground. Rosa didn't slow down. She drove the tractor out of the barn and kept going, heading for the main road. Behind her, she could hear David shouting, his voice raw with fury. She didn't look back. She just drove, the cold winter air stinging her face, her heart pounding in her ears. The tractor wasn't fast, but it was powerful, plowing through the snow with determined force. When she reached the main road, she saw a car approaching, Sarah's car, returning from town. Rosa waved frantically, and Sarah slowed, her expression confused as she took in the sight of Rosa on Ethan's tractor. Rosa pulled the tractor to the side of the road as Sarah stopped her car. "David's at the farm!" she shouted as soon as Sarah rolled down her window. "He has a gun! Call the sheriff!" Sarah's eyes widened in alarm. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, quickly relaying the information. "They're sending deputies now," she told Rosa. "Get in the car. We need to get away from here." Rosa hesitated, looking back toward the farm. "I can't just leave." "You can. And you will," Sarah said firmly. That man tried to kill Ethan. He'd do the same to you. Let the police handle it. Reluctantly, Rosa climbed down from the tractor and got into Sarah's car. As they drove away, she kept looking back, half expecting to see David pursuing them. But the road behind them remained empty. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, glancing at Rosa with concern. "Did he hurt you?" Rosa shook her head. "I'm fine, just scared." Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. "It's over now. The police will catch him. He won't hurt you or Ethan ever again." Rosa wanted to believe her. But after everything that had happened, it was hard to trust that David would ever truly be out of their lives. At the hospital, Rosa told Ethan everything. His face grew darker with each word, anger and fear warring in his eyes. "I should have been there," he said, his hands clenching the bedsheets. "If he had hurt you." "But he didn't," Rosa reminded him, taking his hand. "I'm okay, and the sheriff called while we were on our way here. They've got the farm surrounded. David's not getting away this time." Ethan relaxed slightly, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. "I can't lose you, Rosa, not now, not ever." Rosa felt tears well up. "You won't," she promised. "I'm right here. This is where I belong." They sat together, hands clasped, waiting for news. The hours crawled by, tension building with each minute that passed without word from the sheriff. Finally, as evening settled over the hospital, Sheriff Reynolds appeared in the doorway of Ethan's room. "We got him," he said simply. Rosa and Ethan both exhaled, relief washing over them. "Where?" Rosa asked. "Trying to steal a car from your neighbor's place," Reynolds said. "Desperate man making desperate choices. He didn't even put up a fight when we cornered him." "Is it really over?" Rosa asked, hardly daring to believe it. Reynolds nodded. "It's over. Winters is in custody, facing charges in 2 states now. He'll be behind bars for a long time." He paused. "Bennett's cooperating with the investigation, trying to save himself. The bank board has suspended him pending a full review." "And the farm?" Ethan asked. "Safe," Reynolds assured him. "My deputy spoke with your lawyer. All the fraud allegations have been dropped. Your accounts should be unfrozen by tomorrow." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, relief evident on his face. "Thank you, Tom, for everything." Reynolds smiled. "Just doing my job. You focus on getting better. And Rosa," he turned to her, "you showed real courage today. Not many people would have kept their wits about them like that." After the sheriff left, Rosa and Ethan sat in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. "I thought I'd lost everything once before," Ethan finally said. "When Claire left, when Matt died, I never thought I'd find happiness again." He looked at Rosa, his eyes full of emotion. "And then you showed up on my porch that night," Rosa smiled, remembering. "Just looking for a place to sleep." "And you found a home," Ethan said softly. "At least I hope you did." "I did," Rosa confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. "More than that, I found where I belong, who I belong with." Ethan squeezed her hand. "When I get out of here, when I'm back on my feet, Rosa, I want to make it official. I want to marry you." Rosa's heart swelled. After all the running, all the fear, all the uncertainty, here was the promise of something permanent, something real. "Yes," she said simply, tears of joy spilling onto her cheeks. "Yes, Ethan. I want that too." Spring came early to Three Pines Farm. The snow melted, revealing fields ready for planting. The trees budded, then bloomed, painting the orchard in shades of pink and white. Birds returned, filling the air with song, and on a perfect Saturday in May, Rosa Mendez became Rosa Calder in a simple ceremony on the farm, surrounded by friends who had become family. Ethan had recovered fully from his injuries. The farm was thriving under their joint care. David was serving time for his crimes, and Bennett had left town after losing his position at the bank. Life wasn't perfect, farming never was, with its dependence on weather and market prices and 100 factors beyond anyone's control. But it was good. Better than good. As they danced together at their reception, held in the barn that had been transformed with flowers and lights, Ethan held Rosa close. "Happy?" he asked, his voice soft against her ear. Rosa looked around at the farm, their farm, now in every sense. at the community that had embraced her, at the man who had opened his door and his heart to her on a stormy night months ago. "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes with a smile that came from deep within her soul. "This is exactly where I'm meant to be." And as Ethan bent to kiss her, Rosa knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found what she'd been searching for. All along, not just a place to stay, but a place to belong, a home, a love, a future. All at Three Pines Farm, with the man who had simply said, "Then sleep here and stay as long as you need." As it turned out, she needed to stay forever. And that was exactly what she planned to do.